lost my job. I really didn't have the effort or the energy to apply for new jobs right away. So that caused me to really sit at home, and I had a lot of time to think, and I started to really sit in my depression. Now, Rashid was like, I'm going to say fake caring and trying to make things work, just because I feel like throughout the relationship, the things that I thought that were real, it's hard to know what was real, what was fake, what was the truth, and what were lies. And that's why I think my brain is just still so confused about a lot of stuff. But, just being in the house and knowing that I just lost my job, you would think that a person that loved me and cared about me would have really stepped in and not even asked me for anything like, do you need help paying this bill? Do you need more money for the rent? Like, do you want me to clean up more? Like, just to take on those extra duties. But instead, it was still me doing everything physically, financially, mentally. And at this point, I had already lost myself. I was already lost, but I was still trying to truckle along and still try to fight through the battles in our relationship. So maybe 2 weeks before we were going to DC, a lot of stuff started to happen, and I started to notice it. I would be at home and I would have a little bit more time to myself to clean. And when I was going one day to take out the trash from what I had swept up in the house, I saw two black t-shirts in the trash can. So I'm like, why are two black t-shirts in the trash can? I'm like, he just got these. So I took them out the trash because I'm like, what's wrong with them? Like, I can easily wash them. And they had like white stains on the t-shirt. And if you are catching my drift, it was definitely cum stains on the shirt. So, my thing is, we had towels, we have napkins, why would you do it on your shirt? But I'll tell you, like I said before, my bed is very low, and he had one side of the bed and I had one side of the bed that we normally slept on together. The side that he slept on, because at that time he had the rack and his clothes and everything else, so maybe he just pulled one out and did it. But it started to make me think that maybe he does have a sex problem, or maybe he is fantasizing about these women that he's coming across. I'm not sure what it was, but to know that he was very insecure and just seeing these little things, I started to think more into it. Like, he's trying to fill a void for himself through sex and through having multiple women that he can, create this image for. And I think that's what really got him off. And by no means, I am not against anybody pleasing themselves, but you had never done it before, and now I'm starting to find it. So in my mind, I'm like, am I trapping him in the house to where he feels like he can't do certain things? Because we were having sex pretty often, and the sex was always good between us. So I just couldn't understand that part of it. So I found it maybe 2 or 3 times after that, and I was just like, you know what? Whatever. Then, I was going through his Instagram one day while he was asleep, and I accidentally clicked at the top where it has your profile name. And then when I clicked it by accident, he had like 4 other Instagram names that were like fake pages. And I can't remember all of the names, and I didn't screenshot this for whatever reason because I was normally screenshotting everything. He had about 4 different Instagram pages that were not his. And some of them had followers and some of them didn't. And then on one of the pages that I clicked, it had certain pictures of him that were like previous pictures. And so I was like, okay, that's like a little weird, especially if, you didn't know this person, but again, you created the page. I was going through his pictures and I was starting to see that the pages that he created, he was using them to like his own pictures and to follow maybe other people that he was not in contact with anymore or that he just wanted to keep tabs on. I'm not sure what that was all about, but I just thought it was very strange to me. And we were going on dates and stuff, but then he started to, always bring to my attention like I was either looking mopey or I was always sad. And, I act like I didn't know what he was talking about, but in all reality, I did. Because at this point, how can you not see what you're doing to me and what kind of person you're turning me into? Yes, I'm sad as fuck because I'm turning into a person that I don't recognize anymore. I'm fighting for somebody that is not even fighting for me, let alone at this point could even care less about me because you know the problems that I'm having with us in the relationship and you're living with me. You're being super disrespectful. You're hurting my feelings every chance you get. And it's just women after women after women after women. And I could see if we were doing the same things to each other, like if I was engaging in that type of activity. But like I said, I was very loyal and trying to be very faithful to Rashid and our relationship because it was a different type of love that I had for him. And I don't know if it was the trauma bond, if it was the sex, if it was the soul tie, I'm not sure. But I started to see so many things in this man that I wanted to be there for him, and fuck the relationship. I wanted to be there for you as a friend. Because regardless of how he's looking at everything now, especially with me coming out and telling my story, I was your friend before anything else. Before the love, before I let you come into my house, everything, and I trusted you. And that was the reason why I allowed you to move in with me until you figured yourself out. I was there up until every single point of this relationship trying to help you because I loved you. Now, when DC was coming, I was already just kind of in like this very sad, depressive mood anyways because I didn't have a job anymore. I'm sitting at home. And when I'm sitting at home, I'm sitting in silence. I'm starting to sit in silence. I'm starting to think about a lot of stuff. And I'm really just in my thoughts because now I'm at home and I have nothing else to do. And so I'm like, okay, DC is going to be a good trip. We're both going to get out the house. We're both going to put some of this shit to rest. And hopefully this will be another clean slate for us. And so me and him had never been there before. And I was at least getting a little bit of excitement trying to find like restaurants, trying to find activities, trying to find things for us to do because I've always wanted to go to DC, particularly for the African American Museum. It's one of the hugest and it has a lot of things that I'm interested in. So I was just super excited to be doing that with him specifically and also us sharing that experience together. So the night before DC comes, we're in the living room, we're packing, and everything was good. Like we were just talking, we were laughing, we were just really excited to go on the trip. And we both made an agreement that that weekend it was going to be drama free. It was not going to be any nonsense. And we were just going to enjoy each other's company and really just have a good time. Now, I did bring my camera because I wanted to start vlogging. It's been put on hold for so long because again, I've just been so focused and dedicated into like my career and like my relationships that all of my dreams and my goals have definitely been put on the side because everything else seemed to have been a priority versus pouring into me and pouring into myself, right? So we agreed, and the next morning comes. We had to be at the train station like super early, like maybe 5 or 6 a.m. And just going in the train station and taking the travel there. Again, I was halfway excited, But then something started to click to me while we were in the train station. And I don't know what it was that clicked to me. I just knew that everything that I was doing was starting to become very wrong. Like something clicked to me and said, girl, you're spending money, you're planning all these things, you're doing all of these things, but you know it's wrong. And you know you should get out of it. And I also want to mention something else. So I studied Rashid. I started to study him because I really wanted to understand what he liked, what he didn't like. When it came like to his music preferences, I found out, he was kind of into Justin Bieber and Lil Wayne and just a couple other things. I was really doing my research because I'm like, I have to understand this man, especially if we're going to continue to deal with each other. And I'm already feeling like a prisoner in my home and walking on eggshells. So I just want to just not do the same shit that we're doing anymore because we're slowly deteriorating from each other, but we're just trying to stay connected and trying to make it work. Whatever. So I really started to study him and I knew he loved basketball. Now, before this whole DC trip was planned, I had bought us really good tickets to go see the New York Knicks, and they were going up against the LA Lakers. And I got us really good seats. Now, they were not courtside, but they were about 10 rows back. Very good seats, and I spent a pretty good amount on these tickets. Now, when we had got into the whole thing about Sasha and everything else that was happening, I ended up getting my refund. I didn't get the whole refund back because it was closer to the date, and the game was actually going to be that weekend that we had rescheduled the whole event for DC. So didn't end up doing the basketball game. We ended up just going to DC that weekend. And on the train, even in the train station before we got on the train, I was just sitting there and I just started to cry out of nowhere. And he would always ask me when he would see me cry, like, am I crying? I'm like, no, it's my allergies, or no, it's this. But I'm just crying because I knew in my heart, I just knew in my heart, this man is not my person. This man is not my person. But at that moment in that time, I was just so invested. I was just so invested because I think, with the whole love bombing and like gaslighting thing, when we had good moments and we were not fighting and we were not arguing, that is what I started to fall in love with. Because I think in my mind, if he was to really get it together, Rashid would have been my person. Because I think I'm such a person that is very energetic, very outgoing. At the time, I had a really good personality and all that good stuff. And he was more like reserved, laid back, but he had so many good qualities to him. And it was a lot of the things that I loved in a person. But at the same time, when we're having all these good things, you know, it's more bad than good. So it was a lot of up and down, and it was just so confusing for me. And so, crying in the train station and just asking myself, like, how did I get this deep? How did I get this far? And every little thing that I thought was going to work, or every little thing that I thought I could do was going to work, and it just wasn't. I was starting to pray for this man more. I was starting to put everything to the side and still love him the same way. Starting to really venture out and buy things that I think he would really like, whether it was materialistic, whether it was a basketball game, whether it was something. I just kept trying and I kept trying and I kept trying, right? And, I just don't know how you could sit here and you can watch a person walk out of the house every day before I even lost my job. Walk out of the house every day and not think that, I'm really fucking this girl up. Like, I'm really fucking this girl up, and I have a front row ticket to seeing her crash and burn. But I digress. So we're on the train station, and just the little things that I would do for him really made me feel just good inside as a person. He was one of those people when we would be in cabs going out to eat, or, for example, in the train going to DC, he always like slouched his head over. And I'm like, I never wanted him to get a crook. So I'm always lifting his head up, putting his head on my shoulders and stuff like that. So it happened on our way to DC. And, I'm just sitting there and just caressing him and really just trying to find the spark, because I was starting to lose it for him a little bit, but I'm trying to find the spark. And, when we get to DC, we got settled in. We kind of went out. We went to go see the monument. We did that first. We kind of went a little bit of sightseeing. I can't really remember everything right now. I'll include a couple pictures and maybe a video of what we did, just to give a little glimpse of our vacation. And that night, we were planning to go out somewhere. Now, during the day, he asked me to take pictures of him on his phone when we were at certain places. And I was so hooked on going through the phone. Even when I tried not to be, I just gravitated to do certain things. And while I'm taking his picture, I'm like pulling it down to see like notifications and anything like that. And he had new numbers in his phone. So I'm like trying to act like, let me get the lighting right, or let me, situate the picture a certain way, whatever. And I see two messages. He's texting like two women. And then one of the messages, he's telling the girl like, no, I'm in DC. I'm with my cousin and his girlfriend. And the girl's like, so you mean to tell me that you there by yourself? And he's like, no, I promise I'm here by myself, and I'm just having a good time with my family for the weekend. And so I just continued to take his pictures, but in my mind, I'm like, you can't even go a weekend that we plan together and not do shit while you're around me, or do shit in my face. Like, you legit cannot stay away from this phone and texting these women and really enjoying life. But no, you're more focused on creating this image for somebody and sending the women all the pictures that I'm taking for him and just telling them about his experience while he's in DC, but just like low key being quiet with me. Like, yeah, obviously we're talking because we're together, but he was so focused and in his phone, I might as well have not been there. So we were walking and we were coming from the monument trying to look for something to eat. It was lunchtime and we were looking for something to eat. And there was a particular restaurant. I'm so caught up in trying to make sure the story is accurate. I can't even remember the restaurant's name. But long story short, we went to this restaurant and there was a lot of people there. And so I'm like, okay, well, we have this restaurant in New York City. I've been to it a couple times. The food is not that bad. Let's go in here and eat. So he was looking in there and he was like, I don't really know if I want to go in there. But I'm like, why would we not go in there, and we're looking for lunch and we're trying to eat? And just the body language and how he said the statement that he told me, I felt like in that moment, I knew you were not comfortable walking into this restaurant with me to have lunch. But it was so strange because I'm like, we go out on dates in New York City. Whether it's out to eat, whether it's a museum, whether it's somewhere like a vacation, like we were going out. So that shit was so confusing to me. And like I said, now that I am in my transition now, I have not had to deal with a man that was like that in a very long time. And that is what added to my insecurities. So we got into a little argument about that. We ended up finding somewhere to have lunch. And I'm just sitting there because I'm like, I'm just so tired. Like, I'm just so tired because now everything that we deal with in New York, you're bringing it here. And this is more money I'm spending out of my pocket to try to spend time with somebody that I really fucking care about. And I think that's something that's in his fucked up reality and how he lives, that he is projecting all of that onto other people. When I said all of that and when I did all of that, I meant it. Like, my love is pure, my love is genuine, especially the amount that I gave to you. But he wasn't satisfied with anything. He was not satisfied with anything. And so after we found the place that we were going to go eat at, I was kind of a little standoffish. I was still upset about the whole first incident with the first restaurant choice. And, he was trying to do the whole manipulation thing, like, oh, you're bringing all of this drama here to DC. You're really not talking. Your attitude has changed and all this other kind of stuff. I'm like, Rashid, you're making me like this. But I started to feel bad again because I'm like, you know what? We are on a trip. Maybe it is my fault. Let me switch it up. So then I started to get in a little better mood, and we were ordering drinks, we were ordering shots, and we ordered food, and it started to become a better time. Now, we didn't know where we were going to eat for dinner, but I had a friend that I met here in New York City that had now moved to DC. And him and his partner were out, and I said, well, I'm in town with my boyfriend, so I'll come meet y'all and we can do something. Or, if he doesn't want to do it, I'll do something with him, leave him at the Airbnb, and then I'll come see y'all. So we didn't have anywhere really to eat. We did make reservations for, I think it was Carmine's. And we were in the house getting ready, and, I just started to see him in his phone. And that shit was pissing me off because he's literally giving these women a play-by-play of our vacation. And it's like, I'm sitting right here and you're not even paying me any attention. But these women don't know anything about you. They don't give a fuck about you. The only thing that they care about is that you portray this person to them, and Lord knows you probably sent them a dick pic or a dick video, so that's probably got their pussy jumping. And that's it. But I was trying to get to know the real you. And that just really ate me up, and it just started to turn me like just a little evil. So I'm like getting ready or whatever, and I'm just telling him, I'm like, listen, I'm seeing you texting all these women, and you're here on a vacation that we planned together. I'm not really understanding what the reason is for it. Like, I'm just not understanding what the reason is for it. And it kind of turned into a big argument. And, in the middle of the conversation, he told me, he said, yeah, I think when we get back home, I'm going to move out. And for whatever reason, me and him both started having this thing where it's like, I'm going to move out. I'm going to leave you alone. More so on my end, I'm going to quit talking to you. Because I tried to do these things just to get a peace of mind and to let things cool down between us. But again, he would always come to the room. He would always hug me and say, why do I not want to talk to him? And just making me fall back into his arms. And that is just so crazy and just manipulative. And I feel like he knew it. And that's why I was trapped and I couldn't go anywhere. And so In the middle of the argument, I just grabbed his phone because I'm like, it's in his hands. He's not even paying attention to me. I grabbed his phone and I'm like, listen, fuck this phone. Like, I'm really trying to have a heart to heart with you and trying to talk to you about the problems that I'm having with you in our relationship. And here we are on a vacation talking about the same thing. Talking about the same thing. And he just kept asking me his phone back. And I told him, no, you're going to listen to what I have to tell you because I keep holding all this shit in and it's bottling up inside of me and I'm about to explode. So after I was done saying what I was saying to him with the phone, I just kept hearing those words in the back of my mind. When we get back to the house, I'm going to move. When we get back to the house, I'm going to move. And I did not want Rashid to move or to leave me. And it sounds desperate, but I wasn't desperate. It was just at that point, we had already built a connection. And like I said, relationships take work. And I felt like I had put in the work to find out what was going to happen with us in the long haul. And I felt that I was owed that and I deserved that because, like I said, to see all of these flaws that you have as a person and you have a person right here that's loving you the same, not judging you, and not doing anything to make you feel less than. But meanwhile, on the other hand, you're making me feel worthless. You're making me feel insecure. You got me questioning myself, my worth. I'm already having suicidal thoughts at this point. So, the one thing I do not like about Rashid was that he always thought sex could make things better. And with that whole thing, and then with me thinking that sex is why people love somebody, that's why I always was engaging in sex with him. Yes, it feels good, but that shit doesn't make you feel good once it's done and over with. Especially if you're just going to continue to get mistreated and thrown to the side like you're nothing. And so in the middle of me trying to, explain to him the argument and stuff like that, he just grabbed me. He's like, come here, come here. And next thing you know, we're having sex again. We're having sex, and I think that's what he thought was going to make everything okay every time. And so after we had sex, we ended up getting dressed. We went out and we found this rooftop at this club, and it was really nice. Like, we had dinner, the music was good, like it was just good vibes for the rest of the night. I was taking pictures of him in the lobby, he took some pictures of me, and we just ended it off on a good night. And when we got back to the Airbnb, we had more sex. So I'm like, okay, cool, like hopefully the rest of this trip will go as planned. So the next day of the trip, we had a bunch of things planned. We were going to the African American Museum. We were going to the Museum of, it was either National Science and Space or something like that. And we were just going to really just end that Sunday on a good note and head back to New York City. So the whole day was fine. Like, the African American Museum, the National Space Museum was good. Everything was fine. But, it was when we went to have lunch that was a little confusing for me, right? Now, we ended up going to go have lunch at, out of all places, the Cheesecake Factory. But for whatever reason, me and him were just super excited to see it. And we were on our way to another restaurant, but we had the cab driver stop and we ended up going to go have lunch at the Cheesecake Factory. So while we're having lunch, we start talking about certain things about what we like in our partners, what we didn't like in past relationships and things like that. And we started talking about kids again and things like that. And he was starting to bring up certain things about, this is how I want my future wife to be, or this is how I want my kids to be raised. And it kind of sparked a conversation between us. But when we would talk about certain stuff while we were there, his responses were definitely the responses to the questions or the conversation that we were having at the time. But it was in a way where he was low-key letting me know it's not going to be with you, though. Not necessarily saying it right out loud, but was just saying, it's not going to be you. And I'm just sitting at the table and I'm just in awe because I'm like, girl, how many more signs do you need before you're gonna just wake up and just realize that this man does not want you, but he's gonna continue to drag you as far as he can because you're allowing him to. And I just kept that in the back of my mind. So we finished having lunch and we was kind of just bullshitting for the rest of the time that we were in DC. We went back to the place, I think it was called Penn Social, and we had got really cool with the people that worked there. So we were there, we were playing pool, we were meeting new people, and then before you knew it, it was time for us to go back home. So while we're on the train going back to New York, he had his iPhone connected to his iPad that I bought for him. Now, he was watching something, some kind of podcast on YouTube on his iPad. But since his Apple ID was connected to the iPad, when he fell asleep, since I wasn't able to get into the phone, I, slowly took the iPad. And I was seeing in the iPad more messages from more girls, and he was telling this one girl again, I'm in DC, I'm with my family having a good time, and so on and so forth. But I started to see like listings or like realtors texting him about apartments. But mind you, I had him sign the lease in January when it was due, so we were not even a month and a half good enough into our new lease, and I was starting to see that. So it was kind of like weird for me to see that, and I just didn't think anything of it. So I closed the iPad, I just put it back in his little tray that he had that he was watching it on, and I just turned the other way because now I have an attitude and now I'm just all over the place. Like I really want people to understand like this type of love, yes, it's toxic, but it's also damaging because I'm having all these thoughts. I'm constantly thinking about shit. Like my brain is just it's just not working. It's not functioning because I'm just being torn in so many different ways, and I'm trying to survive. I'm in survival mode. I can't stop thinking about him. I can't stop thinking about the relationship. I can't stop thinking about all this fucked up shit that is happening to me in my life that I've never had happen to me before. And that is as real as I can get with y'all. This love was just different in some good ways, but then in a lot of bad ways. Because now I'm this person that's trying to pick up the pieces and I'm trying to heal from it. And he still, in some way, has like a hold over my brain. And I want that part to end. I truly want that part to end. So when we got back to New York, me and him weren't like even really talking. Like he had an attitude, I had an attitude. But I feel like my attitude was valid. You have no reason to really have an attitude with me or to feel any type of way with me because I didn't do anything to you. And so when we were getting out the train station and going back up to get everything, he actually forgot that iPad on the train. And thank God the train didn't leave and he was able to get it. But in that moment, I didn't even care to like go down and help him because I'm like, you know what? That's nothing but karma starting to hit you. But I was like, damn, I just paid a lot of money for this iPad. I didn't want him to lose it. So he gets the iPad and we get in the cab and we head back home. And everything was just awkward. Like everything was just awkward. We were trying to, decompress, undo our suitcases and our luggage, but the house was just very quiet between us. It was just very quiet, and I don't know, like for a trip that we planned together, I thought it was just going to be something super special and just something that was going to bring us closer. But what I'm starting to realize in this new chapter of my life that I'm currently in, if God wants something to be removed and you just keep wanting it to stay, he is going to do everything in his power until you finally let go. Until you finally let go. So that night had ended, and Valentine's Day was coming up, so I'm already like, trying to question him, like, what do you think you want to do for Valentine's Day? I know you're working, but do you want to go out and do something? So me and him were trying to agree on like something to do for Valentine's Day, and I just really thought, that was again gonna bridge the gap between us. And Rashid's never really bought me anything. It was more so like him just paying for the dates, but I just think again that's just something that he normally does. He's paying to go out to eat, he's paying for drinks because he's also getting something out of it. He's not just giving it solely to the person. So around Valentine's Day, he had ordered something for me like a long time ago. And I guess it finally came around Valentine's Day. It was a pink Marc Jacobs bag, and he got me some Tom Ford perfume. Now, in my mind, here's how I thought. I'm like, well, I don't think he would really buy something and waste his money if he was really not trying to make it work and really did not care about me and love me, right? Wrong. So, accepted the gifts, and I started buying him little things too. I bought him some sneakers, bought him some T-shirts, and just like little things like that. And that was like our Valentine's Day to each other. Now, I stopped going through the phone because at this point I didn't need to keep going through the phone because I was starting to see everything. Everything was already starting to unpeel from the layers that he had as a person. So I really didn't need to keep seeing this man's phone. So I laid off for a while. Maybe the whole rest of February going into March. Now, March was very interesting. March was very interesting because we weren't really getting into a lot of arguments, but it was still like, I'm so confused. Very confused. And we went out to eat at STK one night, and we were having a conversation, and I brought it up like, what is your ideal wife? Like, what do you think your ideal wife is? And do you think you've ever dated that person? Do you think, whatever? And the words that he told to me, I will probably always remember these words because he looked at me and he said, you are my ideal wife. You cook for me, you clean for me, you really take care of me. You show me love, you help me. I was helping this man with his taxes, helping this man with his health, everything. And so when he told that to me, whatever I had felt for him negatively had went away. And that really made me feel so good because, it could have been lies, it could have been a facade, it could have been fake, but in that moment, just to actually hear him, say that type of stuff to me, that stuck with me. That really stuck with me because I was really working my ass 25/8 around the clock. And now I'm sitting in this house because I have no job. I'm struggling to get out of the bed. And at this point, I really wasn't even cleaning anymore because I wasn't getting any help. I would sweep something up, easily could have swept it into a dustpan and threw it in the trash. But I would just leave it in a pile until I felt the energy to do it. I would cook, I would leave dishes in the sink. Just, yeah, that was starting to become my life because I everything was starting to become a huge struggle and a huge task for me. Now, I started to involve my therapist a little bit more into our relationship by this point because I hadn't really told her a lot or really went in depth of how much I was really going through with Rashid. I kind of was just, sugarcoating it. Hey, I have a new boyfriend. We're kind of having a little bit of issues. But at that point, I didn't tell her that I think I'm experiencing depression. I didn't tell her that I think I'm experiencing all these things. And I did not tell her the depths of our relationship and what was going on. And before I get to that, I was trying to include more people in it so I could just get advice and just have a voice and some type of power in the relationship. And, trying to confide in my mom. My mom is always going to be in my corner, but I think, she was just to a point to where I was complaining about it too much. And she just told me, you'll know when you're tired. And you're not tired yet. Like, you will completely know when you're tired and you're not tired yet. And when it came to my friends, this is where I think me and my friends started to kind of fall off a little bit and had a little disconnect because I'm really trying to defend him and saying, he is going to change. He just signed the lease with me, like all these things. But my friends were also the same way. They're like, don't keep asking us for advice if you're just going to continue to deal with him and continue to go back to him. So I started to kind of like not even have any friends anymore to talk to about it. So everything is falling on my own to deal with. And so I went to a particular therapy session, and my therapy sessions are normally just 1 hour. I cannot get everything in 1 hour. So I was just trying to break it down to her as fast as I can, as quick as I can, being very accurate and letting her know where I am now as far as like my mental health is concerned. And so while I'm telling her some of the things that we're dealing with, she kind of stops me and she's like, let me write some stuff down really quick. But she's like, I think you're dealing with a narcissist. And I said, a narcissist? I'm like, okay, I've heard the word before, but I never really, knew what it meant or what kind of person would be narcissistic. So I'm like, no, I don't think he's that way. I just think he's X, Y, and Z. And so she's like, okay, well, I'm just saying, I think, what you're telling me is a lot of like things that line up with a narcissist. So we ended our therapy session, and I just remember coming home that day. He was at work, and I remember sitting at my island in the kitchen, and I just started to research what a narcissist was, what their characteristics was, what they look like, how they act. And when I say everything was lining up with this man, I couldn't believe it. I could not believe it. And this is where my algorithm started to change again, because I started to research more on social media narcissism. People that were recovering from narcissistic abuse, how to detach from a narcissist, really trying to understand what a narcissist was. And now I knew for a fact Rashid was a narcissist. And so doing all of that research and, trying to also find my power to either make it work or to leave, again, adding to the all over the place mess. And even in the house, everything started to kind of change between us. I was listening to more music that was very subliminal. We had each other on Instagram. All of my stories and my posts and my stories were becoming very much like subliminal, because I wanted you to know at some point, if you don't change or if you don't start showing me the type of love that I'm giving to you, I'm going to leave you. And I think these were just things that were just more confidence boosters for me to do it, along with, me listening to my podcast and things like that. And slowly but surely, things were just starting to get very dead for us, where I don't think that, the love that maybe we did once have for each other, it just wasn't being present anymore. It was starting to be very flat surfaced, and it was just declining. And at some point, it was very much back and forth between him sleeping in the living room or him just coming into the room with me very late. But like I said, I knew these were times where you're interacting with other people and you are, texting away and doing all these other things. And by this point, my brain was so fried, I couldn't keep up anymore. I couldn't keep up anymore. I couldn't keep adding all these women into my mind. I couldn't keep going to these women's Instagram pages. I couldn't keep trying to figure out what was wrong with me. I just could not keep up anymore. And at this point, I was defeated. I was very defeated and did not know which way to turn, which way to go. And so one night, I'm in the bed and I hear my phone vibrating. And I'm like, who is this calling me late at night? But I didn't pay it any attention because I'm like, whatever, I'll get back to you in the morning, leave a voicemail, text me, whatever. But then maybe like 15 minutes later, I get another call. And so I'm like, who is this calling my phone? Long behold, it's Sasha. And why is she calling my phone? Stay tuned for part 8.